and I'm just talking to some of the Mirandus developers, and I was like, why am I not streaming this right now? We're having such interesting conversations about the future of this metaverse. So yeah, now we are streaming it. We remedied it. So introduce yourself really quick and what you're building for Gala. And you can just
Guys, yeah, I'm Jason Hughes. I'm the architect and lead engineer for Mirandus. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I'm excited because we're getting to show all of the great progress that we've had in this last couple of quarters. And yeah, we're just kind of riffing on various topics. So
yeah. All right, cool. And we have another Galaverse attendee here who's also very excited for this, and he owns an outpost, so he might have some questions as well.
Yeah, I'm Harry. I'm born in Korea, but I'm living in Sydney at the moment. This is my first time in Galaverse, so I'm so excited.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's cool. All right, so let's start it off just going over some of what we already talked about. But when I was asking about interesting comeback, talking about how in order for a bot to learn, it's going to have to die a lot and literally help the player economy. And then also talk about what you were talking about as far as enemies literally being learning AI. I thought that was so interesting.
yeah, so one of the things that if you've followed the AI progress in the last several years, it's gotten so much better. And as one of the things that they do is it's called Q learning or reinforcement learning. And basically what happens is it fails a lot. It fails all the time. You only get to see it when it's awesome. It's kind of like the really great videos you see on, Chive or something, where it's always people who have done something for 10,000 hours and they're just awesome. You don't see the times when they fall down and hurt themselves. But that's what most of the bots are going to do, right? Bots are going to fail constantly until finally they don't fail. Well, in most games, there's no penalty to failure. In Mirandus, there's penalty to failure, which means that every time that they die, they have to go through a cemetery and reborn, right? Every time that they log in, they're going to have to rent an exemplar or own one of their own. They're going to have to do all the things that players have to do, which is expensive, right? So everybody else in the entire economy are going to benefit from it. And overall, I'm not too worried about it. If there's bots, fine. I mean, for what it matters, we run our own bots. That's how our NPCs work. And our NPCs, they're using reinforcement learning too. So we're going to try and make them smarter over time. We're going to try and make them not want to die. That's very different in Mirandus versus almost every other game. Every other game, monsters are walking piñatas, and you want to go punch them and get their goodies, right? We don't want you to do that. Well, I mean, we want you to try, but you're not going to win all the time. And monsters don't want to die, so they're going to do their best not to. They're going to do their best to kick your butt.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, sure. If you see an interesting question in chat, feel free to share it. But yeah, so how come we've never seen enemies in a video game, crypto game or not, that have had this reinforcement learning AI?
That's a really good question. Reinforcement learning is not super new, but it's more academic. And that's why you're seeing that the people who are doing awesome AI stuff right now, they're in AI research firms. They're not like the everyman. Game developers are mostly focused on making a product that people want to play. And there's a handful of games out there who have tried to do reinforcement learning. There was one called Mendel, maybe that was a character in it, but it was like a little spider guy that would run around, and he would learn by interacting with this environment. It took a really long time. It was super boring to play that game because as a single player game, it just took forever, and it didn't really get that smart that quick. Well, the thing is with an MMO, servers are online all the time. You've got hundreds or thousands of NPCs that are learning all the time, so they can get better really fast, relative to like a single player game where you're the only person engaging with them.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. And also, I think like another thing that will enable you guys to do this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier about how artificial intelligence and actual training is getting so much cheaper year after year after year. So something might be possible this year or next year that was way too expensive to reasonably do 2 or 3 years ago. And that makes a really big difference.
Someone asked, Dota 2 had a 5-man AI team that learned on the go. Is this similar?
Okay.
Yeah, he's asking if it's similar. Like
is it similar? It's
the Dota AI learning.
It's possible. I mean, ones that learn on the go, you can absolutely do it. It takes a lot of compute power. It doesn't mean that you couldn't do it. I think it's just challenging. The progress in the last few years your GPU is like 10,000 times faster than something that was around 15 years ago. So it's so much easier, and the modeling of how an AI should be structured has advanced in our understanding on how to construct it. So the way that you make an AI these days is a lot more better understood. So yeah, if there are people out there who are doing this in real time, awesome. That'll just make ours better because we can learn from them.
Okay, so I have a question that's based on some of our conversation a little bit earlier when you were talking about how the number of players is going to be limited by the number of exemplars in the world. And because I think this game is going to be so awesome, like it's literally going to be its own country. Like it's going to have a GDP larger than many countries like Malta, where we are right now. Like Mirandus will probably have a bigger GDP than Malta. I am like foreseeing this world where like so many people like hear about Mirandus and are like seeing other people like earn a living in Mirandus, and they like want to play, and there's like this massive backlog of players that just really wants to get into the world but can't. Do you foresee a situation like that, or in that situation, would you guys like be releasing, I don't know, more human exemplars or something like that?
Well, here's what I would say first, is that we have 50,000 exemplars that could potentially log in at any time. What we want to do, at least for the next several years, is focus on making sure that those players have a great experience. We get all the gameplay features in, blah, 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 blah. In terms of the longer term game, if we can get it to the point where all 50,000 of those people are logged in all the time, whether it's themselves or they're renting it out to somebody else, or their friends or neighbors are borrowing them, if we have 50,000 people in it and it's capped, that makes them more valuable, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't seem like a bad thing. So then the price of borrowing or renting an exemplar goes up, and then the value is there for those people. At some point, if there's too many people and the price is astronomical, that makes sense for us to start talking about how are the alternatives. Maybe we can have non-exemplar characters that come in. I don't think that they would be free, but I think that it would be a conversation we need to have with the community that exists already, because we've made some suggestions that the exemplars not are the exclusive characters, but they have to still be special. So the characters that come along aren't going to be as good. They're going to be different.
Okay.
Brown asked if there was a set number of play tests that you guys have in mind.
Just every quarter or every 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I like pretty much whenever you guys need to test something new so that you can continue the development. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's really interesting. So I'm also curious on another scaling question, I guess. Because the number of deeds is limited, and I know you guys have already, like the line's a little blurry with like docs and stuff, but as you guys continue to expand the world, which I know is something that you want to do, how do you guys envision not allowing the world to just seem sparse or barren at a certain point when there's just like, there's more land, but there's not more deeds? Have you guys thought about ways to remedy that potential issue?
So I think what we want is, how to put this, unlike most games, you're not going to just leave the starter zone forever and never come back. So the value of land is kind of always present. So as we add more world spaces, the reason we would do that is we want to introduce new kinds of content. New kinds of content might be new monsters or new resources, or we need more space for more lands, right? I don't know how long it would be for us to get to that point, but I already know that the expected number of zones that we're going to have is not going to be big enough for all the landowners to already place their deeds. So that's a pretty big number, and there's reason for that. It's not that we don't want people to place their deeds, it's that we expect a certain percentage is going to be out on OpenSea or up for sale, or maybe pulled out of the game for one reason or another. And that's typical, But as we get to the point where the whole world is already filled out years from now, and Mirandus has, hundreds of thousands of players that are super engaged and all using exemplars constantly, I think that the landowners are going to be really excited whenever we talk about adding more land or adding more space to the world. And then in much the way that you see, people who are invested early are more likely to get the opportunities early. So if there's going to be land for sale, it's going to be to those people first, most likely. I'm not going to make that statement that it will be, but talk to McCarthy. He'll be the one who makes those decisions.
Yeah. Okay, so he asked a question earlier about like the buildings and like more buildings than deeds. And I know McCarthy has mentioned a potential solution being enlarging the size of the deeds that already exist, which I suppose could also maybe even help with the expanded world thing that I was talking about before. Can you leak anything about the sizes of the citadels?
Citadels. Here's what we know right now, and everything I say is subject to change.
For sure.
I'm not the authority. But citadels are special, very, very, very special. And what I would expect from Mirandus is that a citadel is probably a zone unto itself. It's big enough that it's just the whole zone. Yeah. We're going to work with the people who have bought citadels to build something that they're happy with, because it's not a normal plot. It's not just like, oh, I want to pop one of these. No, this is like very custom. It's made for them. It's very expensive, but the reason for that is we're going to put extra effort in. The developers are working directly with the people who own citadels to make it what they want. So it's its own place. Like, you exit the rest of the world, go through their gate, and use zone load to a completely different spot.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. I cannot wait to see some of those citadels in the world and being able to, like, yeah, that's going to be mind-blowing. Yeah. Okay, so one question that one of my viewers, when I was interviewing Michael McCarthy, was pretty sad I didn't ask, was for an update on the Polyient vaults. Because I know there's been, like, since those were released, there's been crazy changes to how you guys are thinking about items moving in the world and, like, all of that. So where do you see Polyient vaults kind of fitting into this new paradigm of having your items on the blockchain and all of that?
So it's early days. We've already implemented, that's part of what we did in the server this past couple of quarters, is we've made it such that your wallet items still map to real world game items. But that doesn't mean that when you log in with your character the first time that you're holding all of those items. It lives in your account. Your account is likely to be accessible through a Polyient vault, which means if you bring in a character and you want to use a sword one of your other characters has, you go to your Polyient vault, you pull it out, that's where you get it. If you don't own one, you probably use someone else's for a fee. Yeah. So highly, highly important item in the game that you're going to need to use to retrieve items from your own account for your character. But what's nice about that is you have to go to a particular place in a town to make that transaction with yourself effectively. So it's not like you're not going to be in the middle of the game someplace and be like, oh, I really need this one ring right now. You log out, you log back in, and you have it. No, you have to go back someplace and get it, which is more physical. That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah. Okay, so then if I'm understanding this correctly, like if you have just a deed, so you have a house and you probably have a chest in there or something, and you drop off an item, and then you can log in with another one of your exemplars and pick up that item from that same house. But if you drop it off at a Polyient vault, then you can log in at a character that's somewhere else completely in the world at another Polyient vault and be able to grab it there, so that you don't have to, like, go to the same physical location.
I believe that that's the case. Everything's subject to change. You know, when McCarthy says it, that's when it's true. Yeah. I'm saying things that I think are true. Okay. This is what I understand. Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about, like, seafaring and the oceans and, like, treasure and stuff like that. But before I get to that, I'm just curious. I want to hear a little bit about, like, what you're working on right now and, like, what those struggles are, but also, like, what some of the most exciting parts of that are.
As it pertains specifically to boats and ocean?
No.
Or just in general?
Yeah, okay. That was just a precursor of where we're going next, in case people are bored with your answer to this question.
So let's go with what we're working on right now is...
Because you're like actually building the servers and the code and
everything, yeah. So if you saw the earlier live stream, what you saw was basically the product of all the last 6 months or so of us, like, rewriting lots of cool stuff. But in terms of, like, the really detailed stuff, what we're building is the action set, and the action set is basically every item that you get as an NFT has a set of actions that it can perform. When you put that in your wallet, you pull it out of your wallet, put it into your character, you still have to equip it. You put it in your action bar at the bottom. When you click a button, it then equips the item. Equipping the item means you can now do the actions it performs. So when you get that working, instead of having to write custom code for everything that you want to do in the game, we can now data drive most of that stuff, which means instead of an engineer being in the way for every new feature, we have artists and designers and animators who get to make all the cool things they want to make. So making it really fast for us to add more gameplay, more content, more items, more all the things.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we're
Speed of
really
iteration is-
all the yeah. And if you've looked at Mirandus, like over the past year and a half, we've gone from super rudimentary to where we are today, and it's still early. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still early. But the reason we got here is that everything that we've been building it for iteration. Like, everybody can get into the game and run in less than a minute. And every change that they make, our designers can make that change and they're running in less than a minute. So everything is about going fast. And with the team that we've got, it's just amazing how much we get done. And the more we unblock everybody else, the faster it goes.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you have any questions?
It's a random question. So Gala Games or Eric Shimari bought a Dragon box for huge amount of money,
Yeah.
like 4 million, 5 million. What do you think about that?
I wish I had one. I don't really have a comment on that except that the Vox is so cool. I have one. It's not for sale, but I love every couple of days on OpenSea somebody's like, "I'll give you this. I'll give you this." I'm like, "No, you can have it," but it's really cool. I love them.
One more question. Are we gonna able to fishing in Mirandus?
What MMO doesn't have fishing?
All right, that's awesome. Okay, we're going to talk about boats and that in a second, but chat had a paid question that I thought was actually very interesting. Someone was wondering, how do you plan on ensuring that new players to the game, once there's already a really established economy and a really established player base, don't feel alienated or left out or unable to like join into the economy and be able to compete with those that are already super high leveled, especially when the creatures and enemies and stuff like that are going to continually be learning and getting better.
So learning and getting better, I think I don't want to say that they're going to be undefeatable. What they're going to do is be effective. AI is super hard to write, so monsters generally just are dumb in most games. They're just punching bags. So we want them not to be dumb. We want them to do smart things. Try and stay alive. Try and kill characters if you have to. Get away, whatever. I don't think that new players are going to have a hard time fitting in because there's going to be some jobs that are lower level, right? There's going to be things like, this is an example, just an idea. If I'm a high level character, I'm down like just slaughtering monsters and getting some cool stuff. I don't necessarily want to track all the way back to town to sell the stuff. Why couldn't I have some low level character who's just a Sherpa come hang out and be like, oh, you want to sell this? Yeah, I'll run back to town and sell it for you. So they do things that aren't necessarily like, I'm not a tank, I'm not a 40 level guy, but I can be useful.
I can carry stuff for you, man.
Right. I mean, that's what you have knights and you have squires. You don't need everybody to be a knight. If everyone's a knight, nobody's a knight.
Yeah, that's true. That's really cool. All right, let's finally talk about docs and stuff. I'll look at this in a second. Can you just screenshot that question? All right. So I have a dock, and I think the 3rd level up ship. And I'm curious, how do you guys picture like the actual seafaring? Like, it's not going to be like what's that pirate game that you love playing? Yeah, it's not going to be like Sea of Thieves, right? It's more going to be like you pick a destination, and then based on the quality of your ship and whether or not you're a seafarer is like the likelihood that you reach the destination, or like how do you guys actually see that playing out?
That's touching some sensitive topics. What I would suggest is imagine a world where you have cartographers that draw maps. Imagine a world where you have boats. Imagine a world where you have different skills. The intersection of those things, you can extrapolate. I can't talk about it though. It's super, super sensitive.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so then one of the reasons to own a boat is the promise that boats are going to be able to reach materium treasures that players without a boat aren't going to be able to access. So how do you guys envision, like, if you go to an island, like, is that going to be like a full explorable world similar to the mainland? Or do you just like go there and it's like, oh, congrats, you get the treasure? How are you guys picturing the actual island hunting type stuff?
I would expect it to be basically another mode of transportation. I don't think it's going to take as long as like trying to take a horse across an entire continent. I expect it to be faster. I don't think that we're going to have a lot of combat on boats or anything like that. That's not what Mirandus is about. But going to a place is just another place.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a way to get there, then maybe that's why there's more material, because most people haven't gotten there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, I feel like a lot of ship owners probably going to be able to make a whole business just being ferries for players that don't own boats and love those zones and enjoy hunting there. So are there going to be like certain islands that are like become increasingly exclusive to the larger and larger ships? Is that kind of what's being pictured?
That's a really good question. I feel like that's also pretty sensitive, but I don't know that exclusive is the right word. Okay. It might be that it's more valuable to be able to reach those new islands for the very high-end players and people who have the boats that can get there, whether it's all boats or if it's like, maybe it's capacity of how many people can go at a time. I mean, there's a lot of undecided or not undecided, unrevealed information there. That'll come at a future time.
Okay. So then if islands are going to be like a brand new zone, is it going to be possible as a player to go to an island and then set your deed on that island so that you can just like spawn there?
Spawn mechanics are something that you probably want to talk to McCarthy about.
I mean,
but there will be.
You put up a cemetery there.
There will be land. There will be land. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Interesting. Yeah. That opens up a whole world of possibilities. I suppose. All right. Do you have any other questions?
Is there gonna be more content with the ship, like ship fights or like creatures from oceans, like?
I would probably say not right off the bat. If we do it at all, I think the part that people are really excited about Mirandus is more, it's the economy and it's the adventure and it's the newness and it's the seriousness of the endeavor. Moving a ship is not all that interesting in terms of like naval combat. There are games that are really good at that. I wouldn't try to compete with them. And if that's not where we're going to compete effectively, then I probably wouldn't put a lot of resources into it. So I want people to enjoy what we're giving them and see the value and the effort that we're making. So I would say probably not, but I won't ever say no. If you guys demand it, then the answer is yes.
All right, I got another question from the live stream. Someone is wondering, since the game is going to be like far more open and not necessarily quest driven, is the game still going to be narrative driven? Like, how do you guys kind of foresee that part of the world?
So what I would say is, hi Chris, we have a fantastic narrative designer who's one of the best in the industry and has shipped more awesome games with narrative in it than you can even count, right? His name's Chris. What I would say is, we're not going to ram it down your throat, but it's there. It's absolutely there.
So for players that love story, they're going to be able to find some.
I would hope people would dig and find it. It's going to be there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I know that McCarthy loves the idea of like discovering new things that reveal more stuff about the world, and he really wants there to be that narrative in the game, which is pretty exciting. All right, I don't have many more questions, but I do think it's cool because you guys have been doing some new hiring, and I know at the last AMA you guys just brought in someone who's working on World of Warcraft for the last decade. Yeah. Can you talk about some of the new talent that has been coming online?
Oh, we've got some amazing guys. When I tell people that we have the dream team, I'm not just saying that. Like, the guys that we have on our team right now have been making games for between 15 and 25 years. Like, super, super experienced. Our lead systems designer, he worked on Star Citizen for quite a number of years and has built out a lot of their game loops. We just grabbed one of the World of Warcraft level designers who had been there for almost 10 years. These guys have been doing it for a long time, and they're, all of our histories go way, way back to the AAA stuff. So what I would say is, we have incredibly talented people. Every person who we bring on is a 3 to 10xer. Like, these are not ordinary guys. We're bringing on the best talent we can find, and it's super competitive. So we're really picky, and the guys that we brought on so far have just all been multipliers.
Yeah, really really cool. So if there's some really talented game developers that either are watching this live stream or find it, how can they apply? Is Mirandus hiring for any specific roles right now? I know that in a crypto bear market, maybe a lot of projects that some talented guys are on aren't going to be existing by the end of this year. How can people reach out to try and join the Mirandus team?
We have a bunch of open recs on our website. Go check out the careers page. Anything that you see there, if it looks like it's a good match, please reach out. Send us an email. There may be a type form in there. Definitely check out all of our, if you're on LinkedIn, please go to LinkedIn and check out our career page. Look at anywhere that it looks like people are talking to you, that they're from Gala, and just ask. Like, if you're awesome at something, we want to talk to you. It doesn't matter if there's an open rec or not. We always hire awesome.
Yeah. Here, you want to come introduce yourself really quick and just tell us what you're working on regarding Mirandus and why you're excited about it? Thank you, by the way.
Yeah,
this is so awesome being able to talk in person. Okay, sweet.
Yeah, my name's Mike Rasnick. I'm the audio director for Central Audio, actually, at Gala. So I'm working on a number of different games, but specifically, I've spent the last 3 months working on Mirandus. For the first month, we were getting the audio engine set up with the game engine and really get everything working. And then we went out and put a field recording rig together, which there's pictures of and some video footage around. We've recorded a lot of day and night ambiences and stuff, as well as a custom bow and arrow experience. We also have recently done voiceover sessions for goblins. We created a whole goblin language that people haven't even heard yet, but that we're really excited to be able to feature that in the game as soon as the content's there to show off. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been 3 months here at Gala, and it's been absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like
So I just played the alpha build that's going to be going out to Exemplar owners, and there's a lot of cool sound in there, like listening to the breeze blow over the grass, and like hearing the bow and arrow pull back and stuff. Tell us a little bit about like some of the previous games that you've done sound for, and then how Mirandus is different in not having music, and how that like changes what it's like doing sound for Mirandus.
Absolutely. The main thing to think about in a game like this is immersion and how we want to make people feel when they get inside the game. I'm a huge fan of immersive games. I like storytelling games. My experience actually is as a composer. I've been composing music for the last 15 years.
And now you're working on a game without music.
It's fucking crazy. It's totally weird, but it's like a great challenge. I think one of the best things about what I do is getting to do different things with different challenges constantly. I would hate to have to do the same thing over and over again. I've worked on Ratchet and Clank, 2 of the games into the Nexus, and also the PS4 version, 2016. It also worked on things like Farmville. I've done a lot of Clash of Clans videos. Also like movies, film trailers, all kinds of different work in audio, but I'm used to creating high quality audio. That's always my goal, is to really create the best possible sounding experience that I can. So coming into Mirandus, it was a little bit of a surprise. I'm sort of jumping on board and creating something that doesn't have music in it. But in the same sense, I've spent a lot of time in nature. I like to camp. I like to, it still feels like as much of a game and an awesome immersive game as anything I could imagine. But yeah, I mean, for me, what's different is instead of sitting down in my studio, coming up with sounds, recording musicians, doing what I usually do, using synthesizers maybe, I actually put together a field recording gig. I got some really nice microphones,
I saw some pictures
nice
of you guys
equipment
out
and stuff that I know is gonna fucking sound awesome. And then it's just about finding, I live in LA, so I have to like find places where there's not airplanes, there's not cars, there's not a bunch of people around, trying to get like pristine locations where I actually record some real sounds that we can use inside the Mirandus world. But you know, we again, it was a little bit of a rush. I want to get out to the mountains, do a little bit of camping maybe, start to really record more sounds. I did a hiking trip in Hawaii recently, and we were like the first people out at like 7 a.m, and there was like nobody there, and it was just all like birds and crickets and brush that we were walking by, and I was like, this is like the sound of what I want to create.
Yeah.
So
when you find a sound that you really like, do you think there's going to be some like back and forth where you're like, all right, you guys need to add this creature into the world because I want this sound to exist to add this ambience to this area?
Well, I'm probably way past that because I've done that so much with like music and stuff in the past. But I mean, ultimately, I realize that my role is to support the content that's being created. So that used to happen. I think there's a level of experimentation that goes into like when you're learning your craft. And I remember early on, I would be like, oh, how does this work? And then I'd work on it for a half hour and be like, oh, that feels wrong. I'll try this avenue. This avenue. But I've worked on 500 games. I've been writing music like every day or working in audio almost every day for probably like the last 20 years or so. And I think that I've gotten like pretty good at finding the right thing. Sometimes it's not always so easy. I don't want to make it sound like it's easy. It's fucking like a lifetime journey of struggling and getting frustrated and then making it better and then making it awesome and stuff. So, but I think even with this experience, I'd like it to be about 30% better than it sounds right now. But overall, we're really happy with what we were able to do in the amount of time that we had. And I think it's just gonna fucking be amazing. I mean, to be honest.
Okay, so one thing that a lot of games do to make different parts of the world seem different is different parts of the world have different soundtracks. Like there's different music playing, and like in really dangerous areas, there's like super intense music, and then in peaceful areas, there's more peaceful music. So how do you see like maybe accomplishing that same goal without actually having the music to set the tone?
Yes. Well, I think sound is just as powerful. And one of the things that we had initially talked about was say that everything is, in fact, we have a trailer that's somewhere, and hopefully it'll end up on YouTube pretty soon. Yeah. But I sort of like featured a little bit of this idea because like it starts out where they show like, the morning and the sunset, and there's like a fire, and you see birds flying over. So, you could imagine like what it sounds like to wake up when you're camping or something, and there's nature around you, and it feels very like comfortable and beautiful and serene. But then they do then they pivot over to a bunch of goblins hanging out. So when I think of goblins, I'm like, well, how do you make them sound creepy? Because the goal is that you want to kill them, right? So we're like, well, let's get rid of those birds, and then let's make it some weird sounding like insects that kind of scaly maybe, and then adding in a couple of buzzing flies, right? So then if you have flies around and then you don't have all the birds and stuff, it suddenly sounds a little disgusting, right? And then the next thing is if there's goblins around, you're going to shoot them, and they're like actually scary and they're threatening. Maybe it's also a similar thing of perhaps like you're walking around, there's birds, and then you would duck the sound out of the birds and then maybe create silence. Because if you're used to hearing sound and suddenly there's silence, that could be uncomfortable.
Yeah, something's coming.
Right. Or you could do even like very subtle things, like say that there's wind, right? And you hear wind with the trees rustling. What if you take the trees rustling out and then suddenly you just have like low frequency, like there's just, and then that can sound like, well, why is that there? And it's the unfamiliar that can be unsettling, and that's ultimately what you're trying to do. And then if you see these things, they can make noises, right? So we actually sat down and re-recorded a really fantastic voiceover actor who's done creature voices for Star Wars and a bunch of other projects. We worked with a linguist who invented a language for us. We haven't been able to feature it in yet because there just isn't the content to match it with, but all the grunts that you hear in the game right now and the sounds of the death are like a professional voice actor. And we are going to continue to to process those sounds and make them sound animalistic, and that's all part of the experience. And we'll just feature that rather than music, and it's still going to, people settle into the environment that they get used to, and then that becomes the norm. And then you find ways of shifting that, and I think that's a recipe for success.
All right. So one final question, and then we'll bring on somebody. Then we'll bring on somebody else. Does this game feel different to work on than a lot of the other games that you've made, or does it feel kind of similar but with different challenges?
For me, this is very different because I've never actually worked on an internal team where I'm part of the game development team. You still hear me?
Yeah, I think I can still hear you.
Okay, so it's hard to focus. We'll just give it a second.
All right, go for it.
No, okay, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so usually actually on an audio team, I'm actually working with an audio director and getting direction on creating content, and then I just deliver the content, the team reviews it, and I get yay or nay, or fix this or that. This project, I'm actually part of the conversations about what we're creating,
Yeah.
and then working directly with the team, and then also not getting so much feedback. A lot of times what I create is what goes in, so it's really on me to make sure that it's sounding fucking awesome, because nobody else is going to tell me whether it sounds good or not. So look, I think like having the right amount of experience and getting feedback from the right people who I really trust is really helps me to make sure that I'm coming in at a high bar.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me here.
Pleasure, yeah.
Yeah, that was super great. I love these impromptu MMAs. Okay, let's have you sit down here for a second and just introduce yourself. Say what you're working on for Mirandus, why you're excited about it, and then we'll probably have to wrap up real quick here so that we can live stream the announcements on the main stage.
Excellent. Hello, I'm Arturo Pulesio. I'm the technical art director for Mirandus. And what I do is that I work very closely with Tony. He's the visual art director.
Okay.
So he takes all of the concept art that it takes to create this living, breathing, stylized, reductive art thing, and make it into something that's actionable, performant, and in the engine. So I work very closely with the character artists, the environment artists, the VFX guys, the animators, and the engineers. I need to negotiate back and forth between them and the designers, because you can make an art asset in 1,000 different ways that look excellent, but most of them will be wrong based on the use case. And that is very exciting for me, that I can take a notion and turn it into a reality in the game.
Yeah, that's super cool. So just one final question. How far along, I asked McCarthy this earlier, how far along do you think the art is towards what you might see as like more of a final product? Because we've been seeing crazy improvements just over like the last quarter. Do you see a lot more of that ahead, or do you think you're getting closer to how the game will finally look?
Well, as in any project, there's always a maturation process that happens. So there was the initial change in direction that we were working towards, and this is the first tangible view of what that is.
Yeah.
The idea is to solidify based on this. Of course, there will be more maturation and improvements, and things will be tuned even more. But the idea is to derive from this and have multiple areas with multiple biomes, places that have architecture, places that are more primal than others, more lush. There's going to be different biodiversity, and et cetera, and all of that is going to be concepted out. Any place that has ancient ruins or anything like that, those compositions that are epic and breathtaking to look at are going to get worked into the land and the whole thing. So as far as the changes in kind, we're settling down on those, and we're going to spread wide from here.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish we had more time to keep talking, but we got to get back to the main stage to stream that for everyone. So if you guys enjoyed this, remember to drop a big thumbs up. Hopefully you're more excited about Mirandus after this AMA. Hit subscribe, because we're about to go live again in just a couple minutes on the main stage for brand new Gala Games announcements. See you there.